Hey guys, how you doing? Carlos here. I really hope that everything is okay with you, that you had a really good vacations, and I really wish you the best for this semester and for this year. In our today's video, we're going to study the types of arguments and the quantity of the subject term and the predicate term. This quantity of the subject term and the predicate term is known also as the distribution in the categorical propositions. First of all, we need to remember the types of stuff that we studied in the previous semester. Remember that we studied that we have the concept or idea, that concept and idea in this class are going to meant the same, the judgment and the reasoning, okay, that you can find here. The concept and idea are expressed by the term, okay? The judgment is expressed by the proposition, and finally, the reasoning is expressed by the argument. In this semester, our second semester, we are going to study mainly and basically the final part of the reasoning. We are going to study the arguments. Again, just to remember, for example, an example of a concept will be Donder bebé, my lovely Donder, okay? Donder is the concept, okay? The concept, remember, that is an idea or a representation of an object without affirming or denying something about it. In this case, Donder and nothing more. But for example, if we say Donder is beautiful, we are affirming now that Donder is beautiful. Now we have a subject term that is Donder and a predicate term that is beautiful. With these two new elements, or the new element of the predicate term, the original concept that is Donder is now a proposition. Donder is beautiful. We are now affirming something about the subject term, Donder. That is a judgment that is expressed by the proposition. And finally, the argument is going to be like the building that is done, that is structured with the previous steps, with concepts and with propositions. The reasoning is expressed by the argument, and the argument is any argument is composed by premises and conclusions. These premises and these conclusions are propositions. Propositions that are called, depending on their function, premises or conclusion. In this case, any single argument is going to support a conclusion or a bunch of conclusions with the premises, okay? So, as you know, concept Donder, proposition, Donder is beautiful. Let's make an argument with the previous steps. Let's say that all Labradors are beautiful. Donder is a Labrador, therefore Donder is beautiful. As you can see, this final step of the argument implies the previous ones, and the argument again is built with propositions, and propositions are built themselves with concepts. In the previous example, the conclusion, as you can see, is Donder is beautiful. Therefore, Donder is beautiful. I'm going to repeat the argument. All Labradors are beautiful. Donder is a Labrador. Therefore, Donder is beautiful. The premises that serve as a support for the conclusion are the two previous ones. In other words, all Labradors are beautiful and Donder is a Labrador. These two premises are like the way or the via in order to support or to infer the conclusion, that in this case again is therefore Donder is beautiful. So in this sense, an argument that again is the expression of any reasoning, an argument is composed by propositions that, depending on their function, are going to be called premises and conclusion. And this is really important. The heart of an argument is to support an inference. The inference is this process which one proposition is arrived and affirmed on the basis of some other propositions. This proposition arrived as, again, is called the conclusion, and the basis or the ground that we are using in order to arrive to this proposition that is called conclusions are going to be called premises. A brief summary of all the stuff that I was saying during the past few minutes can be seen here. Again, the premises are the support for the conclusions. If an argument doesn't have a conclusion, that is not an argument. That maybe is an explanation. but the main part or the main purpose of an argument is to provide this basis, this ground for a new knowledge. This new knowledge is the inference, is the conclusion, is the main purpose in which we want to argue something, you know. Therefore, an argument can be understood as a group of propositions of which one of is claimed to follow from others, you know. In other words, and again, in the syllogism that we just said, all Labradors are beautiful, don't there is a Labrador, that two premises are the antecedent, are the support, are the ground for the inference. The inference, the propositional right in that syllogism or in that argument is therefore Donder is beautiful. This conclusion is only possible because of the two previous premises. So that is like the main essence of an argument. Now, it is really important that the first thing that we need to say according to this problem is that there are so many kinds of arguments. The ones that we're going to study in this semester are at least three types: the deductive argument, the inductive argument, and the analogical argument. Brief note, the categorical syllogisms that are like one of the main topics that we're going to see during this semester are a deductive arguments, you know. Their nature relies in being deductive arguments, and we are going to talk about them with calm, you know. But there are so many types of arguments. Now, the deductive arguments. To explain the deductive arguments, consider the following syllogism, or well, the following argument. All the students of logic are amazing. Danny is a logic student, therefore Danny is amazing. In this part, I state that these two premises are that premises. These two propositions, sorry, are premises, are the antecedent. These are before the conclusion, and because of these ones, we can infer, we can get this conclusion. The conclusion is, therefore, Danny is amazing. Remember that these three dots means therefore, okay? We can obviously identify the conclusions always with this, with the therefore, in conclusion, hence, and so on and so on. We have a conclusion indicators that are quite often at the beginning of the proposition. So premises and the conclusion, this is the structure of an argument, okay? Now, how can we identify a deductive argument with this? Please notice that the first proposition is universal. All the students of logic are amazing. Then the following propositions are going to be particulars. Danny is a logic student. Therefore, necessarily, Danny must be amazing. In this sense, of a deductive argument, or of, in a deductive argument, we part or we begin from a universal premise. In this case, all the students of logic are amazing, and we are going to reach a particular conclusion. So in this sense, for the deductive arguments, we part from universality and we go to particularity. Universality to particularity, okay? The main characteristic of these of these arguments is that they provide certainty, okay? In what sense? If this proposition, all the students of logic are amazing, if this proposition is true, therefore, and if this proposition, Danny is a logic student, is true, therefore, necessarily, Danny is amazing, this proposition or this conclusion must be true. When the conclusion is true from true premises, we say that the deductive argument is valid, okay? Now, let's consider the following argument for the deductive arguments, okay? We have the next argument for the inductive ones. Sophie Kuhn, if you are saying this, I'm sorry if I didn't write correctly your last name. Sophie Kuhn, who is a logic student, I simplify that, is amazing. Natalia, who is a logic student, is amazing. Danny, who is a logic student, is amazing. Fatima, who is a logic student, is amazing. As you can see in this case, I added more premises. Yes, we can have more premises more than two. The normal ones that we are going to see in the next topics, the categorical syllogisms only have two premises, but we can have the possibility of have more premises. So these are the premises, and the conclusion is therefore probably all the students of logic are amazing. As you can see, what is the main difference? The main difference relies in the fact that Sophie Kuhn, Natalia, Dani, and Fatima, all of these propositions are categorical propositions type I. Yes? Can you follow me with that? These propositions are particular and affirmative. We are not stating a proposition of all or none. We are stating particularly the person who is involved in each proposition. So therefore, these propositions, all of them are particular, and therefore all of them are propositions type I. As you can see, I to proposition type I, and so on and so on. And finally, the last conclusion is probably all students of logic are amazing. This proposition is A, you know? Now, what is the main difference? For the contrary of the deductive arguments, the inductive arguments parts or begins from particular propositions or premises in order to reach universal conclusions. So we start with the particular and we reach the universality, okay? Now, that is the main difference from a deductive argument. Uh, Now, as you can see, it is really important that you notice that I underline this probably, you know. When a deductive argument, we have certainty there. If the universal proposition is true, therefore the following ones must be true as well, and that is a valid deductive argument. In this sense, we have probability only because what if, for example, if we add another proposition, that is not the case, but in this hypothetical case, what if we add another person here that is not amazing? Therefore, this conclusion cannot be valid, you know? It's only probable. It's only probable that all the students of logic are amazing because we start from the particular ones in order to reach the universal ones. As you can see, this depends on the way we begin the argument. We are going to reach some conclusions, you know? So that is the main difference between a deductive argument and an inductive one. And finally, for the analogical reasoning or argument, you can see that here, you know. In other words, what is an analogy? Is to establish a comparison uh, between two entities because they are alike, you know. So, for example, take a look at this example. I want to buy a new car because mine is crap. That is kind of, you know, true because, you know, philosophy, being a philosophy teacher doesn't give you much money, you know. I'm kidding. But okay, I want to buy a new car because mine is crap. My old car had the same make and model of the new one that I want. This is, in this sense, I'm stating like the features of the characteristic of my old car. Now, my old car with these features gave me very satisfactory service, you know, and the new car that I want to buy maybe give me this very same satisfactory service because it has the same model of my old one. So since I had previously the experience of my old car, I can infer, establishing this analogy, that the new one is going to provide me as well a good service, you know. But it's really important to be crystal clear in this stuff. The analogical reasoning, as the inductive one, only gives a probability, you know. The unique one that can give certainty is the deductive argument. For the reason that I already explained, the deductive argument begins with the universal proposition that goes to the particular ones. The inductive is in the contrary. The inductive begins with the particular propositions and goes to the universal proposition, but that is only probability, you know. And for the analogical reasoning, despite we are making a good inference through an analogy in the previous example, consider that if my old car gave me a good service, the new car that had the same model as the old car is going to give me as well a good service. But I don't have a certainty that my new car, even though has the same model of my previous car or my old car, even I don't have the certainty of that. The analogy doesn't provide certainty. And finally, in order to finish this video, it's important that we see how can we get the quantity of the subject term and the quantity of the predicate term in a categorical proposition. Indeed, that is the tricky stuff. One thing is the quantity of the proposition itself, and the other stuff is the quantity of the subject term and the predicate term. Remember that the categorical propositions are propositions that are composed by a quantity and a quality. This quantity can be whether universal or particular, and the quality can be whether affirmative or negative. And a brief summary of the categorical proposition chart can be seen here. For example, the proposition type A is universal affirmative. And let's make an example. All the students of logic are amazing. All the students of logic are amazing is a universal proposition that we are affirming of all the students. We are stating, or we are referring to all the members of the class of the students of logic. And what are we affirming? We are affirming that they are amazing. So in this sense, the proposition is universal, but the tricky stuff is that the subject term and the predicate term by themselves have a quantity. In this proposition type A, all the students of logic are amazing, the subject term is all the students of logic, including the proposition form all, it's okay. All the students of logic is the subject term, el sujeto, you know. The verb copula, or the verb to be, is not included even in the, nor in the subject term, nor in the predicate term, you know. The verb to be, in this case are, is just the verb to be, okay? And finally, the predicate term, el predicado, is amazing, just amazing, you know. So subject term, all the students of logic, and predicate term, amazing. In other words, the predicate term is the thing that we are affirming or denying of the subject term. So the subject term and the predicate term have by their own quantity, you know, that is independent of the quantity of the categorical proposition itself. How can we get the quantity of the subject term and the quantity of the predicate term? With the following rules. In order to determine the quantity of the subject term, we can use this schema. On what depends the quantity of the subject term? That depends on the quantity of the proposition itself. Let's take a look of this schema. For example, if the quantity of the proposition is universal, for example, the proposition with all or none or no, these propositions are going to give us a subject term that is universal. For example, all the students of logic are amazing. It is really clear that all the students of logic is universal, you know. We are stating for all the students, you know. But for the contrary, let's make the second option. If the quantity of the proposition is particular, therefore the quantity of the subject term is going to be particular. For example, some students of logic are amazing. In this case, it is really, really clear that we are stating only this for some students of logic, subject term. It is really clear that the subject term in this case is particular. So, in other words, the subject term quantity is the same as the proposition, the categorical proposition quantity. But for the quantity of the predicate term, we have another rule, another schema that can be seen here, okay? The quantity of the predicate term depends on the quality, and this is the tricky stuff, on the quality of the proposition, or on the quality of the categorical proposition. The first condition is, if the quality of the proposition is affirmative, in this sense, remember that the categorical propositions that are affirmative are the A and the I. If the quality of the proposition is affirmative, therefore the predicate term is particular, okay? And for example, in the same example that I gave you, all the students of logic are amazing. That is a proposition type A. The predicate term in this proposition is amazing, you know, but since the categorical proposition type A is affirmative, we are going to say that the quantity of the predicate term, in this case amazing, is going to be particular, okay? For in the other hand, if the quality of the proposition is negative, in this case the proposition types E and O, we are going to say that the predicate term is universal. So for example, if we say, no student of logic is amazing, In this example, we have a proposition type E, and the predicate term is again amazing. But in this case, the quality of the proposition is negative. Again, if the quality of the proposition is negative, the predicate term, in this case amazing as well, is going to be, for the contrary, universal. This can be seen in the next table. This can be seen clearer in this chart, okay? I'm really sorry for the light reflection, but as you can see, my studio is a mess. But okay, we have 4 categorical propositions. The quantity and the quality of these categorical propositions, type A, type E, type I, and type O, the quantity of the quality of them, and the quantity and the quality of the subject term and the predicate term of each one of these. Okay, again, remember, one thing is the quantity of the categorical proposition itself, and the other one is the quantity for the subject term and the quantity for the predicate term, okay? So for example, remember that the 2 categorical propositions that are universal are the A and the E. For example, all students of logic are amazing, no students of logic are amazing. We are affirming something about all the students, and in this case, in the E, we are denying something about all the students, you know? The particular ones are the type I and the type O. Some students of logic are amazing and some students of logic are not amazing. Remember in this case, therefore, that the affirmative propositions are the type A and the type I. We affirm in these 2 ones, and we deny the negative ones are the type E and the type O. Yes? I think that this is like a brief review actually of categorical propositions. Now, if we apply the rule that I just told you in the last minutes, let's make these 2 columns, okay? How can we get the quantity of the subject term and the quantity of the the predicate term? Here is the quantity. I wrote the quantity of the predicate term. So how can we get the quantity of the subject term and the predicate term? Remember, the first rule is the quantity of the subject term is going to be basically the same as the quantity of the categorical proposition. All the students of logic, no students of logic, both of them are universal. Therefore, universal and universal, you know? If this column is the same as this one, we are going to write here as well particular and particular. Some students of logic, some students of logic are not. So, in other words, this column, the quantity of the subject term, is going to be basically the same as this one, you know? Is really, really immediate, the point. Some students, that is really clear, that there are only some of them, therefore they are particular. The quantity of the subject term is particular. The tricky one is actually the predicate term. In the predicate term, remember that the quantity of the predicate term depends on the quality of the categorical propositions. If the categorical propositions are affirmative, remember that in this case is the proposition type A and the proposition type I, the quantity of the predicate term is going to be particular, okay? And therefore, if the quantity of the categorical proposition is negative, in the case of the type E and in the type O, the quantity of the predicate term is going to be universal. So this is like a brief summary of the quantity of the subject term and the quantity of the predicate term. And as you can see, I call this chart the poo-poo table, you know? It's really simple, it's really easy to remember that because the poo-poo table, you remember poo-poo, okay, A, E, I, and O. This is immediate, okay, I know that this is really silly, but that will be like a summary of the poo-poo table, okay? It is really important to study how can we get the quantity of the subject term and the predicate term, because that is going to be important for the topic of the categorical syllogisms and actually for the topic of the immediate inferences. So we need to study this and get this clear, you know. I think that it will be enough for today. If you have any question, my lovely students, you know that you count on me. Please, sorry for the, you can text me, send me an email, and I will be glad to help you if you have any doubt, okay? Hope that everything is okay with you. I wish you the best semester, and well, take care.